TPP and the World Trade Organization ruled yesterday that it is a violation of the rights of foreign corporations for the United States to require that beef that comes from other countries where they may inject their cows with chemicals that are frankly illegal in the United States, that it is against the law for the United States to require that beef be labeled, this beef came from Argentina, or this beef came from Brazil, or this beef came from Mexico, or this beef came from an even less developed country where you've got even a higher probability that the beef is laced with hormones and antibiotics and God only knows what all. And I don't understand how you as a conservative could defend that.
Well, here we are. Well, first of all, I think one of the problems that you run into is with these so-called free trade treaties. Free trade is not really, you can't have a 3,000-page free trade treaty. And so anytime you're dealing with these international organizations, you're really dealing with a whole new set of laws. It's being sold to people as sort of a free market, but actually it's just another layer of bureaucracy and regulation.
Oh, I agree. I agree. By the way, have you seen the ObamaTrade.com website?
No.
When we get off the air, go to ObamaTrade.com. It's a conservative website for conservatives. It'll blow your mind.
Sure. And the problem you run into is that when we enter these treaties, a lot of people aren't aware that these treaties actually supersede federal law, and it just becomes the law of the land. And so, frankly, the president and the Senate could do a lot of legislation. They could just sign a treaty with Canada, and as long as the president signs it and it's ratified by the Senate, it's binding federal law. And so this is a problem, and I don't know how to unwind out of it. Certainly, this was a concern when the treaty was signed. I don't know whichever meat treaty we signed.
This one is being litigated under WTO, which was GATT, which was signed by Clinton in 98, I think. And
we have, and it's Canada and Mexico who are the ones who are all set to beat us up. Like, we haven't done anything for Canada and Mexico.
Right.
I mean,
well, it's not the countries; it's the beef producers, it's the companies in those countries that are suing us.
But it's a huge problem, and I think that it's interesting that this came up as Congress is about to hand, the President of the United States this
even more authority. Yeah. So, are you agreeing with me, Neil?
Yeah, maybe I hope I didn't mislead your producer into thinking we were going to be yelling at each other.
You're always welcome, and that's fine. In fact, I think it's marvelous.
I can come up with something.
No. I think it's absolutely marvelous when a genuine, serious progressive like myself can get on the air with a genuine, serious, lifelong conservative like yourself, and we can agree on something.
You remember that great book, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail?
Yeah, by Hunter Thompson.
Where Hunter S. Thompson points out that the number two choice among Wallace voters was McGovern, and the number two choice among McGovern voters was Wallace, and that somehow they all sort of met in the middle.
Yeah. Well, that actually had more to do with the dynamics of the Democratic Party in the South, because the Democratic Party in the South was the racist party, which is now the Republican Party in the South.
Easy.
And back then, they would just, they only voted for Democrats. And so if George Wallace wasn't available, it had to be George McGovern. But I'm not sure that reflects on trade.
Well, I think the problem we run into with trade is that there is a natural disposition among Republicans, certainly among conservatives, and absolutely among libertarians, that you want free trade. The problem is that these are not free trade treaties.
You're right.
And they're full of goodies and sweetheart deals. There's stuff in the Trans-Pacific Partnership Treaty. There's stuff involving, digital royalties for songs and all sorts of crazy
the companies that are going to make billions that we know of so far just because of the WikiLeaks leaks, the two industries that are set to make perhaps trillions over the next decade in profits and revenue are principally the entertainment industry because of the copyright provisions and the pharmaceutical industry because of the patent provisions.
Right, and
which are monopolies, by the way. Jefferson, in all of his correspondences, called copyrights and trademarks monopolies. In fact, his first letter to James Madison, after Madison sent him the new Constitution, was he said, "I will now tell you what I do not like we must amend this to add an absolute ban on monopolies in commerce. In other words, no trademarks, no patents. And then finally, when they wrote it into the Constitution, because Jefferson never patented any of the over 200 really consequential inventions he made. Neither did Ben Franklin, who had over 500 of them, including things like bifocals, and the Franklin stove and the electric, the lightning rod. I mean, things that could have made Ben Franklin rich. He never patented any of them because they didn't think it was right. They believed that, you always stand on the shoulders of others. And what patents do is they stifle innovation. So Jefferson finally came around to saying 3 years.
Listen, I would take, if we went back to what the Constitution, I can't remember. I thought it was, at one point I thought it was, 6, 7, or 14
No, the Constitution says, Article 1, Section 8, the Enumerated Powers Act, it says that the Congress may I'm paraphrasing from memory, but Congress can pass laws specifying patent and copyright protection for the promotion of innovation. And Jefferson's argument was, if you do that for a 3-year period, so somebody can exclusively have a monopoly and make profit for 3 years, that's enough of an incentive. But beyond 3 years, you're talking about long-term monopolies that prevent innovation. And the whole purpose, as literally said in the Constitution, is to promote innovation. But we've kind of gotten away from this labeling. Do you believe that American consumers should have labels that say this beef came from Argentina?
Well, on the domestic side, I really think that our regulatory regime has twisted up the competitive impulses where competitors go after each other. I thought one of the most effective advertising campaigns I'd ever seen was up in Massachusetts when Cumberland Farms Dairy went after Hood Dairy because Hood put fish oil in its milk, and nobody knew. I guess it's a thing that's done all over the place, and it made a lot of money for Cumberland Farms, and it made a big push. If competitors were exposing each other, it would do a much better job than government regulators.
So are you saying, kind of yes or no? Do you think that Americans should have food labeling laws that allow, not necessarily require? Actually, I'm in favor of require, but at the very least allow, because the WTO said you can't even allow it. Allow country of origin labeling.
I think absolutely you should be allowed. I mean, that's free speech. I mean, this
reminds me of when Ben & Jerry's was sued by Monsanto for saying that their ice cream was RGBH free, and they had to take it off their label for a couple of years while it got litigated.
Yeah, that's nonsense. And of course, liberals are all of my liberal friends in Cambridge and Brookline, and they're all eating at restaurants where you right on the menu, it tells you not only what state or farm the steak is from, but is it wheat fed or corn fed? I mean, there are places.
Well, hey, I lived in Portland for 5 years. It'll say on the menu, and this chicken was named Sally.
And he ran free. Free, Tom.
There you go. Freedom. All right, Neil McCabe with TheWashingtonMercury.com, conservative columnist. Neil, always good talking with you. Thanks for dropping by.
Glad to be with you, Tom.
Okay, and ObamaTrade.com. Be sure and check it out as soon as we get off the air. Okay, Neil?
Absolutely. Take care.
Okay, talk to you later.